All right, Naperville, welcome back to Real Talk. This is the podcast where we focus on all things Naperville. We learn about our neighbors, what makes our city great. And you are going to love today's guest. My guess is you already know a little bit about her, but we're going to ask her some questions and I can't wait to dig in. So stay tuned. You are not going to want to miss this. That's all up next on Naperville Real Talk.
This is the city we call our own. These are the stories of the people we call our neighbors. This is the heartbeat of our hometown. Naperville, this is Real Talk.
All right, so today's guest is a Naperville resident, lived here, went to high school here, and unlike most normal teenagers, did some amazing things like becoming the youngest woman to climb the highest peak in all 50 states, and just most recently, the youngest American woman to climb Mount Everest. My guest for today's episode is Lucy Westlake. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about Everest because I think that's what so many people want to hear about. But you are an extraordinary 18-year-old, and I have to find out, a little bit about how you got there. So, you started your climbing journey when you were 7 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, that is. Me and my family, we are always been really adventurous in the nature, love to travel. So it just really lended itself great to our family character. So we started with this thing called climb or high pointing, which is basically climbing to the tallest mountain in every state. And as you mentioned, I now have the record as the youngest woman to complete all 50 states. But back then, that it wasn't really like the goal to set a record to climb all 50 even. It was just, oh, this is such a fun family adventure, a great way to bond. So we did that, and the mountains just keep getting bigger and bigger, and it became more me and my dad's adventure because my brother wasn't super into it. So him and my mom would stay in the car, and me and my dad became climbing partners. So until up to Everest, he did all of the mountains with me. So yeah, it's been an incredible adventure. It's been amazing just to see my dad grow, to see how I've grown, and how we've grown together. So yeah, the mountains have made me into the person I am today.
That's amazing. So you're not only a climber. I know that you're a high school athlete, an endurance athlete. So you're into climbing and running, and I mean, so it sounds like you love the outdoors. And again, that became a bonding thing for your family. Do other members of your family like the outdoors as well?
Yeah, we all have a really deep appreciation for it. Like my parents just, my brother and I were just raised in nature, so both of us have that deep love for it. And he's definitely found it kind of more recently than I have, which has been really cool to see. Just him really dive into that. But I've always just wanted to be outdoors all the time, like whenever possible.
So when you did the 50 highest peaks in all the states, as I think about the United States, and I'm sure not as educated about mountains as you are, especially here in the States. The question that comes to my mind is there are probably some states that don't have super high peaks. I'm curious, just as a fun thing, do you remember what the smallest one is and which state it's in?
Honestly, it would be a very close race for the smallest because there's a few that are literally just flat. Like I remember
Yes.
one, I think it was Louisiana's. I forget exactly which state it was, but it was literally in the sidewalk. Like we had to walk around this neighborhood looking for this little marker because each have this tiny little marker about this big. That's the high point. That's what you got to take the photo with. So we were just trying to find it everywhere. There was one that was in the middle of a school. One that was just in Kansas. That one was just in the middle of nowhere on this tiny little hill. It was barely even walking up. So there's a few like that for sure. But one of the things I love about high pointing is that it brings you to places in the country you'd never ever go to otherwise. Like you see just these remote and a lot of times beautiful places that you wouldn't otherwise go to.
That's a great point. That's got to be a fun part of it. And obviously, there's the challenge of the climb for the ones that are a difficult climb. But then, like you said, just kind of the novelty of visiting these different places. So you live in Naperville now. Have you always lived in Naperville? Did you grow up somewhere else?
Yeah, I grew up somewhere else. I actually moved to Naperville in sixth grade. and began at Washington my 7th grade year. But so I moved in the middle of 6th grade. So before then, I had lived in Louisville, Kentucky for most of my life, and I also actually spent a year in Mexico because I have a lot of family down there.
Oh,
So yeah, Naperville. It's been a while. Like it feels like I've been living here for almost my whole life, but I lived in Louisville before this.
okay. Okay. Very cool. So you've already had a little experience in different parts of the country and in another country, a different part of North America. Um, so when you were in Mexico, did you do climbing there?
Well, when I lived there, I was only 5 and 6 years old,
Okay.
so I did actually climb, that was, I guess, technically my first mountain ever, with my family called La Malinche, but that yeah, but I don't even remember that, to be honest. I saw a picture and it looked fun, but I don't remember that at all. So I have climbed, though, the highest mountain in Mexico. I went back a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, and climbed the mountain with my cousin. He's a climber down there, so it's really
Okay.
cool.
Very neat. So the one question that came into my mind really too was in the United States, we have a lot of different climates. We have a lot of different topography. And then certainly once you go around the world, I mean, obviously there's everything available to you.
Yeah.
So I would imagine the different types of climbs that you've done probably range quite a bit, right? In the approach you have to take or the gear you have to use. Can you describe maybe a few of those different types of climbs that you've encountered over the years?
Yeah, for sure. That's one thing I love about mountaineering is that every single mountain is so different, especially the ones I've done because usually I don't live near a lot of mountains, so I have to travel to them. So I usually travel to a lot of different types of mountains. Like right now, attempting to be the youngest person to do the Explorers Grand Slam, which is climbing to the top of every continent. So I've actually been to 5 of the 7 continents, and all of those mountains have been so different.
Hmm.
Here in North America, the tallest mountain is Denali, and that's in Alaska. So you like right away you're on the glacier. You fly right onto the glacier, and there's no support at all. Like in Everest, on Aconcagua, which is the tallest one in South America, there's a lot of support. Like you get mules can carry your stuff up half some of the way, and then there's different like porters you could also hire. But on Everest, it's all yourself. Or sorry, on Denali, it's all yourself.
Hmm.
So it's very, very different, very challenging. Like that mountain is almost as hard as Everest, just
Hmm.
because everything is just you and the mountain. So that one, yeah, the topography is very, very cold. It's similar, the most similar mountain I've done to Everest, just because it's yeah, just glacier the entire time. And that's like takes like 20 days to climb around there. So that was a big one. And then Mount Elbrus, that one's the highest one in Europe. That one's also on glacier, but it's a lot quicker climb. It's only like 2 days. So that's very different. And then once you get to like Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, you hike through like 7 different ecosystems. It's crazy. Like
Wow.
that's one of the things that's really cool about Kilimanjaro is you go through like rainforest, you go through like the alpine region, you go and you're like up at the top in the rocks. Like it's really, really cool. So and yeah, in South America is also you don't start on glacier, you just trek for a little while. So they're all very different. And I most recently went to the Alps actually just a few days ago. I was climbing in the Alps and I loved those. I've never been to the Alps before and those are gorgeous. So yeah, that's like one of my favorite parts about mountain climbing, just the variety. You never run out of adventures.
I love that you just, just a month ago climbed Everest and you're right back at it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was so unplanned too. In the Swiss Alps, I just like happened to know someone and they were like, "Oh, come climb with us." I was like, "Great, that sounds amazing."
That's wonderful. So when you're climbing, especially like you mentioned Kilimanjaro with all these different ecosystems, and then I would imagine lots of different surfaces. So how much of the climb, I know every mountain's different, but um, maybe on Kilimanjaro, for example, how much of the climb is what probably the average person pictures in their mind of like a vertical, rocky, scaling and how much of it is more of a hike? Can you talk a little bit about those different styles?
Yeah, that's also very dependent on the mountain. So Mount Kilimanjaro is probably the easiest of the 7 summits. So that one, there's no vertical climbing at all. It's very like, I mean, honestly, like if you're in shape, you could probably do it. The hardest part is the altitude.
Mm.
So everyone's body reacts a little differently to altitude. So you can get very sick from that or be completely fine. So that's the hardest part on Kilimanjaro. There's no vertical climbing, anything like that. You don't need a lot of gear. Um, but then mountains like Everest, there's the Khumbu ice fall. That's a very famous part of it as like kind of the most technical, and that requires that vertical climbing. And it's not there's fixed ropes all the way up, so you do have that. You don't have to actually like ice climb with ice axes, which is very difficult. But yeah, it requires like to have an ascender and to cross ladders, jump
Mm.
over crevasses, things like that. So that's very technical. Denali also had some of that. No like vertical rock climbing, but definitely some climbing that was very steep that you had to be totally roped in on, and it was on ledges too. There's a very like exposed ridge on Denali that's very hard. So yeah, so everyone's a little different. And I haven't done a lot of like vertical rock climbing actually. When I was in the Alps a few days ago, I was able to do that. And that's like, I really want to get more into that side of climbing, like more of like that vertical, actually like rock climbing, which is definitely different from like mountaineering or alpinism. They're all like slightly different, but
Mm.
that rock climbing is something that really appeals to me. So I'm hoping I'm going to college actually in California at University of Southern California. So I'm hoping when I'm out there to really like get more into that climbing.
Wonderful. So it sounds like each mountain has a ton of preparation that goes into it, I would imagine. So
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about what that's like, even just from some logistical issues of travel, of maybe permits, and then how much studying do you do of each mountain and the route and the approach you're going to take?
Yeah, yeah. So a mountain like Everest definitely requires a lot more preparation than something like in the US, like the high pointing, things like that. But it's also how much like you're supported by your guide service. So a lot of the times, like on Denali, the first time my dad and I went guided, but then the second time we didn't. If you don't use a guide, that requires a lot more knowledge. You definitely have to study the route, know where you're going, and everything like that. But on Denali, or on Everest, I actually didn't do a lot of studying of the mountain just because I I'm more engaged in the mountain if I don't really know. I really like that adventure side to it, that kind of like unknown. So for some people, I definitely like see where like studying, like knowing exactly what you're about to do is like very helpful. But for me, I really almost like not going in completely blind, but like more just like not knowing, and just like taking it as it comes. So I don't do a lot of studying of the mountains at all, especially when I'm guided because my Sherpa knows the mountain very well. My Sherpa on Everest summited 16 times, so
Wow.
I completely like he knew the route exactly. Um, but if I did by myself, I would definitely have to study the route for sure, and I would not do that the first time. No way. So
So yeah,
um,
oh, go on, go
Oh,
on.
yeah, yeah. And then traveling, just like traveling wise and getting like gear prepared, is also very dependent on the mountain. Like Everest requires a lot of gear,
Mm.
but luckily for me, since I'd done other mountains such as Denali, I had almost all of it.
Mm.
So it depends on like your previous climbing, what you've acquired over the years.
Okay, okay. I'm curious. So talk a little bit more about the Sherpa, like what that role is. I mean, I think a lot of people have heard that term and they kind of get the idea that they're famous guides on Mount Everest, but talk a little bit about that lifestyle and how that comes about.
Yeah, so Sherpa is actually a caste system in Nepal and specifically on Everest. So they have like the porters are a different caste from the Sherpas, and the Sherpa is like a very very important, very high up class because it's very important in their culture. Like that's a very coveted position of guiding people up. That's how you can become famous from that. You can make a lot of money that way and provide for your family. But you have to be. It's mostly a family, like passed down in a family lineage. That's still usually how jobs are passed down there, and it's not. It's changing. It is not completely like that, but especially for Sherpas, since that's such a special job for them. That's usually still it's passed down in your family. So yes, so my Sherpa, his name was Mingma, and his parents were both Sherpas as well, and he actually was a monk for 8
Mm,
years. He thought he wanted to be a monk. So that's so you don't have to exactly follow in your parents' footsteps, but it's like if you want to be a Sherpa, you kind of have to have that in your family. So, but after being a monk for 9 years, that's when he started being a Sherpa. He decided to start guiding, that he wanted to do that. Um, and he was amazing. He totally had, like, the classic monk, like, very patient, very calm, just knew exactly, like, what to do, when to do it, and which was amazing up there. Me and him worked really well together. Like, by the end, we could almost, like, read each other's minds because you have so much gear. You have your oxygen mask on, it's hard to hear
mm.
through your hat, your helmets, it's you almost do have to read each other's minds. It's really crazy, like, the connection you make.
That's amazing. It's 26 days, right? Is how long what your expedition was on Everest?
Yeah, yeah, 27 in total, but
Okay.
yeah, that kind of includes, like, at the bottom, you have to wait for a day to, like, get off the mountain, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a lot of time to get to know one another. And like you said, the trust that you, I suppose, have to really, give right away to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to do that together. So you mentioned like the gear, the oxygen masks. Talk a little bit about that, about the 27 days. What are sort of the phases of the climb like?
Yeah, so when you first fly onto the mountain, you fly in from Kathmandu, to Lukla, which is like the first little village there. And so me and my team, I was the only one summiting the mountain, but I actually had 10 of us in total, just friends and family. My dad actually went with me to base camp. And we just put it out. Whoever wants to come and is in like good shape can go to base camp with us, because it really is just a base camp. It's just trekking,
Hmm.
just hiking. And it is like challenging hiking, and base camp is at 17,500 feet. So that is a very good amount of elevation, more than we have here in the continental US by a
Hmm.
good like 3,000 feet almost. But it took us 8 days to get up to base camp. So that is a good amount of time to acclimatize. So yeah, so the trek up to base camp was amazing. It's so beautiful there. Like the mountains are giant in every direction. There's mountains everywhere, and you're just hiking along these little paths, over like swinging bridges, and that was like one of my favorite parts for sure. And you stay in these things called hostels. They're
Hmm.
kind of like hotels, but not so nice. So yeah, they're like yeah, that you share a kitchen, everything, so it's really nice. And then up to when we get to base camp, that's kind of when the real mountaineering starts.
Hmm.
So that's from there on. The Kumbu ice fall is immediately after base camp, so that
Hmm.
really technical part. And then you're on glacier the rest of the way up. So that's when I got out, my crampons, my ice axe. That's when my teammates went back, and it was just me and my Sherpa from there on out. And the first thing we did was we did a acclimatization rotation, just to, like, you need more time to acclimatize your body. So it's very typical on any big mountain to go up and then come back down. And you sometimes do that many times, sometimes only a few, just depending on how your body reacts. So we went 4 days in total up to Camp 3. There's 4 camps in total before the summit, and after base camp. So we went to Camp 3 and then back down, and then rested for a few days, and then went on our summit push. So my body handled the altitude really well in that rotation. So the summit push went smoothly. We went all the way to the top and didn't have to come back down again. So that was really great. And I was not expecting to be done so fast. Like 27 days is really, usually it takes 40 to 60. So I was really happy with that. And I got to come back for my graduation and everything. So it was super
Yeah,
fun.
you make it sound like, oh, it was so quick, 26 days, but you're saying that is quick compared to normal. That's amazing. So once you make the ascent beyond base camp, from that point, are overnight stays camping essentially, or yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, at base camp, you sleep in tents, but they're like nice tents, and there's also a big kitchen tent, where they actually have chefs. That's amazing. Like it's very nice. I was not expecting something so nice, and I never had that really on any other mountain. So Everest is very very well supported just because so many people do it. That's a very nice thing about it. So base camp was really nice. Camp 1 was very small, so yeah, just tent camping in it. Camp 2, that's kind of like where everyone does their summit. They're like it's kind of like high base camp, so it's a bigger camp as well. So there's actually a kitchen tent there too. But like not as nice tents. It gets a little more like more real mountaineering, more like that real camping type of feel. And then camp 3 and 4 are very remote, very small. Just you and your tent. You cook for yourself. You bring all your own food up there. You all your gas, just everything is carried up by yourself.
Okay. So how much of the day is actually spent climbing?
Yeah, that also depends. So up to base camp, I'd say average like 5, 6 hours of climbing a day, just hiking. And then up from base camp, it also like really depends. It was like 6 hours up to camp 1. But then the next day it was only 4 to camp 3. It was like six. So it's not too strenuous of like hiking days. It's not too long until summit day is very, very long. Summit day is 15 hours in total for us. That's
Wow.
how long it took. Yeah, so that day we woke up at 9 p.m. And we left at 9 p.m. We woke up a little bit earlier. We tried to sleep the entire day. So earlier that day we actually hiked up to camp 4, then just rested for the remainder of the day until like that night. Then left at 9 p.m., summited at 5 a.m. And then it took us 3 hours to get back to camp 4, and then another like 2 or 3 hours down. We went all the way down to camp 2 that day. So
Okay.
just to get off of that upper mountain, you don't want to have to use oxygen again, because at camp 3 and 4 you have to use oxygen typically,
Okay.
unless your plan is to not use oxygen. Then it takes a lot more time on the mountain.
Hmm.
We had to do many more rotations.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was summit day is hard, and then also like going up before summit day, there's a few days. One day is like 8 hours. So, but yeah, it really depends on kind of like where you're going to.
So I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times, and it might be hard for you to put it into words, but when you achieve the summit, how long do you get to soak it in? And can you describe what that feels like? What the view is like?
Yeah, yeah. So we were up on the summit for a good like 20, 25 minutes, which was really great because luckily we were one of the first ones to summit that day. So it was like there's no line or anything. We just got to go right up to the summit, and it was just like it was really unimaginable that we summited. Like I was just like having to tell myself over and over. I was like, I did it. Like I would like whisper to myself when I was up there a few times. I was like, I did it. I did it. And I was just thinking about, how proud I was of myself, how my family would be so proud, and like all the time and energy and money and love they put behind me. Like that summiting for them was a big, yeah, very, very special moment. And the view is also just beautiful. Like we summited about an hour before we summited, the sun rose.
Hmm.
And so all the mountains were just like pink and glowing. And there was like low clouds, and there was just these huge, magnificent peaks all around you, just like poking up out of the clouds. So yeah,
It's
beautiful.
amazing. So you've mentioned your family a few times, and I'm sure they were immensely proud of you. So what is that like? Specifically, I know part of your climbing journey or mountaineering journey has been with your dad. What
Yeah.
is it like for dad, but also mom and brother, to have you go on, especially this one by yourself, a pretty dangerous expedition? What's that like for them?
Yeah, so especially my mom is definitely grown over like the years in her confidence in me. Like she used to be like get really nervous before some of the mountains when I was younger. And she still gets nervous. She still gives me like 5 hugs before I leave and like says goodbye like multiple times. But it's definitely like she definitely has a lot of confidence in me. And really supports me in that, and is really happy for me. And my dad definitely, I know he wanted to be up there with me, but at the same time, like he's so supportive. He just wants like he did it for me. Like that's why he climbs. He started climbing because I loved it, and we like grew together in that. So I know like so he's very happy. I'm still climbing and doing what I love, even if it's not with him all the time. And then my brother too. He like climbing isn't his passion, but he's like a very very good football player, loves sports, and is very athletic. But But yeah, he knows climbing isn't his passion. Sometimes I'm like, oh, please come on, please like climb a mountain with me. And I think he's getting more. His responses have been more towards yes lately. But so I'm working on him. But yeah, but he is really he's really supportive as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I imagine in all of your climbs, not just Everest, but other mountains as well, there have to be some difficult moments, right?
Mhm.
And whether you're with a family member or doing it on your own, is there something you lean on? Is there anything you think about during those hard moments to push through?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a really strong Christian. So that's really what I lean on for sure when I'm up there. I talk to God more than anywhere else in the mountains. Like that's the thing. I just ask him for safety because there's a million things that can go wrong up there. A million things that you can't control that are unknown. So that's yeah, I just like I have to trust that he has a plan for me, and that being up there is I'm not like just in the hands of the unknown. I'm not totally in the hands of the mountains. Because yeah, I've seen a lot of accidents up there. I have,
Mm,
and that's just
yeah.
something that you do have to accept when you're going up there before you climb, is that there's a lot of risks. There are. And you have to decide if you love it enough, if it's something that you're willing to risk. So yeah, and I think a lot about my family too. I miss them a lot, especially on this past Everest trip because I didn't have my dad with me, and usually he's
Mm,
kind of like that tie to home. So I
yeah.
miss them a lot, but just knowing that they're behind me supporting me. I get like text from my mom. I have this little there's no like cell phone service. So I have this little
Right.
Garmin device that like connects my phone to a few numbers. So just getting text from home is the best.
That's nice. You have to be able to have some anchor
Mhm.
to home, so you're not completely out there. So you've climbed. So you've done the 50 highest peaks. You've done in the United States. You've done Everest. And now you said you're working on the Explorer's Grand Slam. So what peaks do you still have to climb?
Yeah, so after having done Everest, I've done 5 of the 7, and I have 2 left, 2 left, and then also the North and South poles. So
Okay.
I have 3 expeditions in total. One is to Antarctica to do Mount Vincent, which is the highest mountain in Antarctica, and then also the South Pole. And the other one is to Oceania to Karsten's Pyramid. That's the highest one in Oceania. And then the third one is to the North Pole. So
Okay.
those are my upcoming adventures that I'm trying to plan. The main thing right now is just raising money because it's
Yeah.
really expensive to do some of these, especially the North and South poles are extremely expensive. So I'm
Mm,
just trying to get sponsors, raise money, um, and then also just wait out some COVID restrictions
mm,
for the one in Oceania for Carson's
mhm.
Pyramid. And my next big adventure is going to college and running at USC. So I'm really excited for that
That's great.
too.
What events are you going to be running there? Do you know yet?
I'm a distance runner, so
Okay.
basically as long as I can find. In cross country, it's a 6K, and then
Okay.
track, probably 2 mile, 5K, 10K, around
Okay.
those events. Yeah.
So you graduated from Naperville North, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I actually graduated a semester early in December so that I could go to Everest, go to Africa, and
Okay.
tour some water projects there because that's definitely a big passion of mine is the water crisis, the water and sanitation crisis. And I went over and got to see a lot of projects over there, so that was amazing.
Yeah, and I want to ask you more about that in a second too. But I have to know what do your high school friends think about what you do?
I think they're starting to understand it a lot more, especially with all like the media coverage that I got after Everest. Like at first, like sometimes they ask me like questions about it, and it's just so hard to explain. You know, it's just such a different world, especially from what we have here in like the Chicago area. There's not no mountains, so like the closest comparison is out west.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's hard to describe, but they it's so fun getting back here and just like everyone loving like giving me so much love and support. And yeah, I really love it. Naperville North has been an amazing part of my life for sure. And all the just the people there. That's what makes it really the people.
That's awesome. So yeah, like you said, college is the next big adventure, and there'll be lots to learn there. What will you be studying when you go there?
I'm going to study public policy is going to be my major, and then my minor is going to be social entrepreneurship.
Oh,
I'm hoping to, after college, go into the field of water and sanitation. So more like the policy side to get different policies implemented in governments that will really create change in those countries. So that's what I'm hoping to do after college. I hope that that's what I want to focus my studies on.
perfect. Well, that leads right into my next question. So I've read that you work with a not-for-profit based out of Kentucky called Waterstep, right? And so that's to address global water crisis. Can you talk more about what Waterstep does? And for people who, I mean, I'll be honest, when I'm in my house in Naperville and I turn on the water and I sprinkled the grass today, I don't think about a crisis because I'm not in one, but there
Yeah.
is. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I got involved with Waterstep because I actually have a pen pal in Uganda who is my age, and her name is Faith, and I've been pen pals with her since I was 2 years old, very, very young. Like our parents used to communicate, and then as we grew older, we would write each other letters. So she told me when we were young, very young, like around 10 or 11 years old, that she was living without clean water, that her family didn't have access to clean water. And I was the same way where I didn't really understand what that meant. I didn't even know that was something that I didn't know it was a crisis at all. Like I just always gone to my tap and filled it up with water, taken showers, use the toilet, everything. I thought that's what everyone had. But then I learned that she didn't, and that was really like just upsetting to me. That she was living without it. So I begged my parents. I was like, "Can we please go to Africa?" And I didn't really know exactly at first what how I would help at all. I just wanted to see her and everything and how she lived. Um, but then I actually got connected when I was around like 13 to Waterstep, which is this nonprofit based out of Louisville, Kentucky, and that's right when we like lived in Louisville too. So that's how we like made that connection. But yeah, so Waterstep actually gave me and my family a water filter and trained us in how to install it in a village. So we were able to go over when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro when I was 13. We also went on that same trip and went to Uganda where they were living and installed a water filter in Faith's village. So after doing that and just seeing the impact that filter had on the community and how everyone lived over there, how different it was, how privileged we are in the US. Um, yeah, it was like life changing. I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I from then on kind of planned to graduate early to be able to go back and visit Faith again, but also just see kind of what I wanted to study in college because I knew that's what I wanted to do after college. Um, so yeah, it's been amazing. Definitely a trip, but that's one of my big motivations behind my climbing is just to raise awareness for that and to use the platform I have, the gifts I have for something greater than myself. I think that's really important.
Well, I'm a little taken aback, just to be honest with you. I was 18 once myself. I remember what it felt like, and you are really amazing for
Thank
your
you.
age to have the perspective that you have. Like you said, outside yourself, which I think we all struggle with at any age. But if someone's inspired by what you just shared, how can they get involved with WaterStep?
Yeah, there's waterstep.org is their organization, and on there they have all the information about themselves. The main way they raise money is they host shoe drives. So you can if you want to volunteer, you can host a shoe drive, or you can just donate directly to Waterstep. There's many ways to get involved that way for sure. And I started an Etsy shop too. If you want to get any, I started a brand called Lucy Climbs. So that Etsy shop, if you want to get any of my merch, all the profits go directly towards Waterstep and their projects in Uganda and Kenya. So that's another way to donate to them and to get involved that way. But yeah, they're an amazing organization, and there are many amazing organizations out there that are doing some really cool things. So yeah, so just if doing a quick Google search, we'll probably pull up a lot of those, which are amazing.
That's awesome. So, um, I can't wait to catch up with you in the future and kind of see where your journey takes you. So we know about kind of what's next with college, what's next, for your climbing adventures and what you hope for the future. You got any plans for this summer? Are you going to take a little break to enjoy your last summer before college?
Yes, yeah, this summer I'm just gonna spend with friends and family, just, yeah, doing a few road trips, traveling a bit, but mostly just, like, relaxing.
Good, good. You deserve it, I think.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I think we could probably talk for hours, and I do think I'd love to have you back at some point in the future just to catch up, and especially when you achieve the Grand Slam. But Lucy, I just want to thank you, not only for joining us, on the podcast, but just sharing your heart and your passion. And I think that's going to be infectious for people probably wherever you go. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story.
I just want to thank my guest, Lucy Westlake, just an amazing young woman. I mean, I think her story needs to be shared. I think we all could use a little bit more perspective, like she gains, not only from a literal sense on her climbing, but just her view of the world. I can't wait to see what lies ahead for her future. As far as what's ahead for the future of Naperville Real Talk, we've got some great guests coming up. I can't wait to share with you. One of our next episodes will be with Cisco Cotto, the radio voice of WBBM and pastor of Village Bible Church here in Naperville. So I can't wait to share that chat with you. You can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and of course on YouTube. And we hope to see you next time on Real Talk.